Imagine stepping into a 1950s American home. The kitchen gleams, the table is perfectly set, and a woman stands with a smile that never wavers. On the surface, everything looks flawless. But behind every polished floor, perfectly folded napkin, and cheerful greeting lies a story rarely told. Every day, millions of housewives navigated invisible rules, balancing endless chores, polite children, and unrelenting expectations, all while hiding their exhaustion and fears. What did it really take to keep up appearances in a world that measured a woman's worth by perfection, obedience, and silence? Today, we're stepping behind the spotless kitchens and smiling faces to uncover the hidden lives, struggles, and quiet heroism of 1950s housewives. And trust me, you're about to see a side of history you'll never forget. In 1950s America, a housewife's life revolved around invisible rules that were never written down, yet everyone knew them. Among these, the unspoken commandment of perfection towered above all else. She wasn't merely expected to cook, clean, and care for the children. She was expected to do so flawlessly while maintaining a flawless appearance herself. A morning didn't begin with the children's cries or the hum of the washing machine. It began with meticulous preparation. Hair had to be set perfectly, dresses carefully pressed, shoes shined, and a delicate touch of lipstick applied, all before the rest of the household had even stirred. Even a minor smudge on her apron or a wrinkled napkin could be perceived as a lapse in character. Every chore carried the weight of judgment. Breakfast had to be served promptly and elegantly, with the table set to magazine standards. Neatly folded napkins, polished silverware, and the right amount of food arranged just so. The laundry, a seemingly endless mountain of shirts, socks, and pillowcases, demanded hours of attention, yet the housewife had to tackle it with grace, never revealing exhaustion or irritation. If children bickered or the phone rang incessantly, her calm demeanor could not falter. Every moment was a performance, and any slip could be noted by a neighbor, family member, or even a passing acquaintance. The pressure extended far beyond the walls of her own home. Social visits, church gatherings, and community events were stages upon which she had to demonstrate the success of her domestic life. She measured herself against other women constantly, consciously or unconsciously, noting who had the best cooked meals, the most polished furniture, or the most charmingly decorated home. Gossip traveled quickly in small towns and suburban streets, reinforcing the fear that imperfection was not merely private, it was public. Magazines and advertisements perpetuated the myth of effortless domestic bliss. Smiling women in spotless kitchens, scrubbed counters, or ironed shirts, as though these labors brought pure joy. Cookbooks promised happiness through the perfect casserole, while household product ads implied that a good wife's identity was inseparable from her spotless home. Even television reinforced this ideal, with shows portraying cheerful mothers who handled chaos without ever breaking a smile. It was a relentless stream of messaging. To be admired, loved, and respected, a woman had to appear content and flawless, regardless of the mental and physical cost. Yet behind the polished exterior, many housewives grappled with isolation and frustration. Hours spent tending to chores and family often left little time for personal pursuits or intellectual engagement. Friendships sometimes became rivalries under the weight of social comparison. Dreams of careers, travel, or personal fulfillment were quietly set aside, sacrificed to uphold the image of domestic perfection. The contrast between what society expected and what life actually entailed could be jarring, yet deviation from the ideal carried social repercussions. Ultimately, a 1950s housewife's worth was measured in smiles, pressed curtains, and impeccable meals rather than personal achievements or financial independence. She bore the invisible crown of perfection with diligence, silently navigating the tension between societal ideals and lived reality. The rules of her world were unwritten but omnipresent, shaping every action, thought, and choice. And while she often found small moments of joy in family life and homekeeping, the underlying pressure was a constant companion, a quiet, invisible reminder that perfection was not just desired, but demanded. In 1950s America, the evening meal was one of the most sacred and scrutinized rituals of family life, and one of the strongest unspoken rules of the household revolved around it. Dinner was not simply food, it was a performance, a demonstration of order, skill, and devotion. By 5:30 or 6 p.m., the housewife was expected to have everything in place. Children were bathed, combed, and dressed, sometimes reluctantly, after a long day of play. The table was immaculately arranged with a spotless tablecloth, polished silverware, and napkins folded just so. Steam rose from carefully prepared dishes, and the aroma of roast, vegetables, or Jell-O salads filled the kitchen, creating a sense of harmony that masked the chaos of the day. For many housewives, the day's rhythm revolved around this moment. Mornings were consumed with laundry, grocery runs, and cleaning. Afternoons were a blur of ironing, mending, and supervising homework. Every task was timed, every movement calculated, so that by evening the house could present the illusion of effortless perfection. A misstep, a burned roast, a forgotten vegetable, a wrinkled tablecloth was not merely a minor inconvenience. It could be read as a failure of character or competence. The invisible clock of 5:30 p.m. ticked relentlessly in kitchens across America, and no wife could ignore it. Magazines, advertisements, and cookbooks reinforced the ideal. Smiling women presented casseroles, golden roasts, and molded salads as though these humble creations were the pinnacle of achievement. Television shows portrayed mothers who effortlessly managed chaos, offering an unattainable standard of grace and efficiency. Neighborhoods became arenas for comparison. Friends and neighbors would casually comment on the presentation of a meal or the tidiness of a dining room, and word of minor lapses could travel quickly, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in thinly veiled criticism. The pressure extended beyond presentation. Cooking for a family required not only skill, but emotional labor. Housewives often masked fatigue, frustration, and impatience, projecting calm and contentment even when the children were misbehaving or the oven burned another dish. Every meal was a test of endurance, creativity, and social acumen. A carefully arranged Jell-O salad could speak volumes about a woman's dedication, while a poorly executed dish could invite unspoken judgment. Pride and anxiety coexisted in equal measure as she arranged each plate and ensured that everyone's preferences were met. The ritual also carried a moral weight. Dinner was a measure of the family's stability and the wife's success. A harmonious meal suggested a well-run household and a happy home, while disorder hinted at neglect or failure. In this sense, the preparation of food transcended the mundane. It became a symbolic act, a nightly performance that validated her role and secured her place in the family hierarchy. Even in moments of exhaustion or frustration, many housewives found subtle joys in this ritual. The sight of children eagerly gathering around the table, the smell of a freshly baked pie, or the brief praise of a husband could validate hours of labor. Yet, the demands never ceased. Tomorrow the clock would start ticking again, another performance awaited, and the expectations of perfection remained as unyielding as ever. In the kitchens of 1950s America, ordinary meals became extraordinary through the housewife's dedication. Dinner was not just a meal, it was a nightly testament to patience, skill, and the quiet power of societal expectation. And while the exterior might gleam with perfection, Behind every plate and polished fork lay hours of unseen effort, anxiety, and devotion, a reflection of a culture that measured women by their ability to transform daily labor into beauty, ritual, and pride. In 1950s America, one of the most pervasive, unspoken rules that guided a housewife's life was the expectation of being constantly presentable. A woman's appearance wasn't simply a personal choice or a matter of vanity. It was an obligation deeply intertwined with her family's reputation and her husband's perceived success. From the moment she awoke, her day revolved around maintaining this standard. Hair had to be styled with precision, dresses carefully pressed, and shoes polished to a shine, all before the household began to stir. A simple breakfast was preceded by hours of preparation, as women devoted themselves to curling, powdering, and arranging their appearance with meticulous care. Every strand of hair, every smudge-free apron, and every brushstroke of lipstick was a carefully orchestrated performance designed to project the illusion of effortless perfection. Even mundane chores demanded grace. Washing dishes, scrubbing floors, or chasing after children had to be done in a manner that left no trace of fatigue. The housewife was expected to maintain her composure and charm, greeting her husband at the door with a warm smile, hair neatly in place, as though she had not spent the day laboring endlessly. Any sign of weariness, wrinkles in her dress, or smudges on her face were considered lapses in responsibility. Magazines and advertisements reinforced this expectation with relentless consistency, depicting women in spotless kitchens, smiling as they performed every household task with poise and pleasure. They offered tips for achieving that fresh-from-the-salon look, presenting beauty routines as both a social obligation and a moral imperative. The psychological weight of these expectations was heavy. Households could be chaotic, children noisy and demanding, laundry never-ending, yet the housewife had to hide exhaustion behind a mask of composure. Fatigue and frustration were private burdens, carefully suppressed to maintain the outward image of a perfect home. Many women woke before dawn, using the quiet hours to prepare not just breakfast, but their own appearance, ensuring that they could face the day without a trace of disorder. In a culture where image carried such immense social weight, letting yourself go was more than a personal failing. It was a visible indicator of inadequacy, a silent critique from neighbors, relatives, and even strangers passing on the street. The expectation to appear immaculate extended beyond the home. Social visits, church events, and community gatherings demanded the same level of polish. Housewives were acutely aware of how their looks reflected upon the family. A well-styled hairdo and carefully chosen dress suggested pride, competence, and respectability, while any lapse could spark judgment or gossip. Even simple acts, such as answering the doorbell, required composure, as if anyone might be observing every detail of their appearance and demeanor. The daily rituals of grooming and presentation, though outwardly focused on beauty, were also acts of discipline and endurance. They required planning, energy, and creativity, often at the expense of rest and personal freedom. The housewife's effort was largely invisible, yet its significance could not be overstated in the social hierarchy of the 1950s. Behind every smile, pressed dress, and perfectly styled curl lay hours of careful labor, emotional restraint, and a quiet negotiation with societal expectations. In the 1950s, a housewife's reputation was judged not only by the cleanliness of her home or the excellence of her meals, it was equally determined by the behavior of her children. There was an unspoken, ever-present expectation that children must be polite, quiet, and respectful at all times. Every misstep, A shout in the grocery store, a refusal to say please or thank you, a messy appearance was seen as a reflection of the mother's own competence or lack thereof. The pressure was relentless, and it shaped every aspect of a housewife's day. From the moment children awoke, the mother's attention was divided between breakfast, laundry, and preparing her household, while simultaneously ensuring that her children were dressed neatly, their hair combed, and their shoes polished. Even something as simple as tying shoelaces or selecting a clean outfit carried weight, as a slip in presentation could result in judgment from neighbors or visitors. Many mothers rose before dawn not only to handle domestic chores, but to supervise the grooming and readiness of their children, making sure they met society's high expectations. The housewife's role extended far beyond caretaking. She was a silent teacher, constantly reinforcing proper behavior. Table manners were drilled with patience and, at times, firmness. Children were reminded to sit straight, chew quietly, and speak politely. Lessons in respect and etiquette were repeated throughout the day. Saying "excuse me," knocking before entering a room, and using polite language in public were considered essential skills reflecting the family's moral and social standing. Discipline could be strict, not out of cruelty, but as a measure of social necessity. In a culture where appearances held immense weight, the consequences of a child misbehaving in public could extend beyond embarrassment. It was an implication that the mother had failed in her most visible duty. Social scrutiny was constant. Neighbors walking past the home, relatives dropping by unannounced, or a fellow shopper in a grocery store could instantly judge the mother based on her children's behavior. Gossip traveled quickly, and a single incident, a child shouting, running in a store, or showing a wrinkled dress, could cast shadows on the mother's reputation for weeks. The housewife learned to anticipate every social situation, preparing both her children and herself to present a flawless image. Even casual walks through the neighborhood were exercises in training, as children were expected to greet others politely, behave calmly, and reflect the family's discipline. Magazines, etiquette books, and advertisements reinforced these expectations, showing well-dressed children sitting quietly at tables or walking hand in hand with their mothers, smiling, calm, and orderly. The ideal portrayed a life of effortless harmony, yet behind every polished image lay hours of preparation, repetition, and patience. Mothers spent days instructing and correcting, their labor largely invisible to outsiders who only saw the final presentation, a well-mannered child and a composed, smiling mother. Ultimately, the 1950s housewife's success was measured not only in domestic skills, but in her ability to mold her children into models of propriety. She was a teacher, disciplinarian, and social strategist all rolled into one, constantly aware that her family's public image rested on her guidance. The meticulous attention to manners, grooming, and behavior was more than an act of care. It was a nightly, daily, and lifelong performance that reflected both her love for her children and her understanding of societal expectations. In this way, a mother's influence extended far beyond the home, shaping public perception and cementing her role as the unseen architect of family respectability. Life in the 1950s may look simple and charming from the outside, with polished kitchens, tidy homes, and perfectly dressed women greeting the world with warm smiles. Yet behind every carefully arranged table and every quiet, composed gesture was a story of patience, resilience, and unseen strength. These women carried invisible burdens, balancing endless chores, family expectations, and societal pressures, all while keeping the world unaware of their struggles. Their lives remind us that history is not only found in speeches, headlines, or public accomplishments, but in the quiet, unspoken moments that shaped daily life. The laughter of children, the gleam of a polished floor, the neatly folded laundry, they all tell a story of dedication and silent courage. Today, we can honor that legacy by remembering the lives behind the idealized images, appreciating the strength it took to navigate a world of expectation, and learning from the resilience they demonstrated every day. Their story is a testament to the quiet power of perseverance, reminding us that sometimes the most extraordinary acts are performed in silence. If this glimpse into the world of 1950s housewives sparked your curiosity, imagine the countless other forgotten stories waiting to be uncovered. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into the hidden moments of our past, and see what life was really like back then.